Boker Tov, good morning, everybody. It's great to be here with you. We're going to be learning today Kabbalah Café, Friday morning, 9:30, right here in Yerushalayim. This special day of Asara Tevet, the 10th day of Tevet, is a very auspicious day. It's also a very sad day, but we're going to try to explain how, even though it's such a sad day, it will hopefully be the greatest Chag possible. I would like to start with saying that this is an article that I read yesterday. This is an article, a very short article with two very short stories written by Sivan Rav Meir. And so in 1949, soon after the Holocaust and the establishment of the State of Israel, the chief rabbinate established this day of the 10th of Tevet to be a day of Kaddish for all of those that were murdered in the Holocaust, unfortunately. And there's no one to say Kaddish for them. So many people do say Kaddish on this day, having in mind for those holy tzaddikim. And so Sivan writes two short stories from the generation just after the Holocaust. The first story is about Yosef Rechavia, who was a doctor to the partisans who fought in the forest of Belarus during World War II. While he was in a hideout, they heard that the Nazis were coming and they were killing all Jews in sight. And so him and his wife and his daughter overdosed. His wife and his daughter unfortunately passed away. And he himself, Yosef, was rendered unconscious and thrown onto a pile of corpses. The partisans found him and they brought him miraculously back alive. He met Sonia, who was a nurse, and after the war, they had a boy. I'm sorry, they had a girl. This daughter, her name is Professor Galia Rahav. She's the head of the Department of Infectious Diseases at Tel HaShomer Hospital here in Israel. She participated in the torch lighting ceremony during Independence Day this past year in honor of the medical teams fighting the coronavirus. The second short story is from the Jewish community in Saloniki, Greece. There were over 60,000 Jews before the war. More than 50,000 of them were murdered by the Nazis. The Burla family was among those that survived, and after the war, they had a son, Avraham, who was born. He grew up, became a doctor, and moved from Greece to the United States. Today, Avraham, Albert, is the CEO of Pfizer, the first drug company to develop a vaccine against the coronavirus. The message is clear, that the children of the Holocaust survivors, and by extension, all of us, have made it their mission to save lives, to bring bracha to the world, and to heal. Now, today, on the 10th of Tevet, what happened was as follows. Samach Melech Bavel, the king of Babylon, made siege on Yerushalayim. And as a result of that, 2.5 years later, the soldiers broke in the siege into Yerushalayim, and that was the 17th day of Tammuz, which is also a fast day. And then 3 weeks later was Tisha B'Av, was the destruction of Yerushalayim and the holy Beit HaMikdash. So one can say that the whole idea of the Asara B'Tevet was a very minor one, because it wasn't the ultimate destruction of the Beit HaMikdash. It was merely one step which led 2.5 years later to the destruction of the Beit HaMikdash. Practically, we find that it's quite the contrary, that this is considered a very severe fast day. In a sense, even more than Tisha B'Av itself. And as we see this year, that the Asara B'Tevet, this fast day that we are fasting right now, is on Friday. Now, according to how Hillel HaZaken established the Jewish calendar about 2,000 years ago, it's impossible for any fast day almost to fall out on Friday or Shabbat. On Shabbat, it's impossible to fall out. And if it does, then we just fast earlier. So Tisha B'Av can fall out on Shabbat, Shabbat Tammuz, and Ta'anit Esther, Tzom Gedalia can all fall on Shabbat. But if they do, we just fast Thursday earlier, or we push it off. We push it off to Sunday. Asara B'Tevet cannot fall out on Shabbat. Why? Because if it would fall out on Shabbat, we would fast on this day. Even though it's Shabbat, it's almost as if it's Yom Kippur. One of the interpretations which explain why this fast is so powerful is because in the Navi it's called Tzom HaAsiri, the fast day of the 10th, quote unquote. What does it mean, the 10th? The 10th month. In the months, in the Jewish calendar, the months begin from Nisan. As it says in the Torah, HaChodesh Hazeh Lachem Rosh Chadashim Rishon Hu Lachem L'Chadshei Hashana. It's the first month. So Nisan, Iyar, Sivan, Tammuz, Av, Elul, Tishrei, Cheshvan, Kislev, Tevet. Tevet is the 10th month. In a sense, Yom Kippur is also the 10th. It's in the 7th month. But it's considered, it's the 10th day of the month. And so therefore, Ba'asiri, B'yom HaAsiri, the Torah says, B'chodesh HaShvi'i, on the 10th day of the 7th month, so just like Yom Kippur is considered the 10th, for another reason, it's the 10th day of the 7th month. But nonetheless, it's the 10th. So too, when it comes to Asara B'Tevet, today, the 10th day of Tevet, it's considered the Tzom HaAsiri. And therefore, just like Yom Kippur, even when it falls on Shabbat, we fast, even though it's Shabbat. So too, on this day, the 10th day of Tevet, we fast on this day, even though it would fall out on Shabbat. Now, it's almost impossible to find a scenario. Even Tisha B'Av, the day itself of the destruction of the Beit HaMikdash, we do not fast on Shabbat if the 9th of Av falls out on Shabbat. We push it off to Sunday. Nevertheless, Asara B'Tevet, we do fast on Shabbat. It does push off the importance of the holy day of Shabbat, where we're supposed to be happy and eat. This year is a little similar. We also, it's very, very rare that a fast day falls out on Friday, because we have a rule that we're not allowed to come into Shabbat in a sad way, in a hungry way. That's why tonight, this afternoon, we daven mincha earlier in order to read the Torah as we do on a fast day in the afternoon. And then we daven Mariv immediately when it's possible. So we could run home and make Kiddush as soon as possible. This way, we will be minimizing in the sorrow and agony leading into Shabbat. So you can probably ask a very, very logical question. The question is that isn't Asara B'Tevet a very lenient fast day? Because it's only leading up towards the destruction of the Beit HaMikdash. And Tisha B'Av, which is the actual destruction of the Beit HaMikdash, that we say is more lenient. Why is Asara B'Tevet so strong? And the answer is because Asara B'Tevet, the 10th day of Tevet, is that which paved the way, which led the way towards the destruction of the Beit HaMikdash. It's almost as if it opened the door. It paved the way. And therefore, in Judaism, that which paves the way for something is considered a major, if not the most important part of it. So let's talk about, in the positive sense of the word, when we talk about the Avot, our holy patriarchs and matriarchs, the great mitzvahs that they did, and therefore the great mitzvahs that we do following them, in a great sense, are to their credit. Why? Because they began. They paved the way. They started. Once you have the opening, then the rest is peanuts. Okay, maybe not peanuts. Maybe it's still a little difficult, but it's incomparable to the first one that does it. For example, when Am Yisrael was about to cross the Yam Suf, and Hashem said, go straight into the sea, v'yiso, travel. Don't stay where you are, don't go back to Mitzrayim, don't wage war, just go straight. They were hesitant because you could understand them. There was a Yam Suf, the Sea of Reeds. Nachshon ben Aminadav, for the tribe of Yehuda, he had the Mesirat Nefesh. And he jumped in. And the water got to his nostrils. And at that point, Hashem, through Moshe Rabbeinu, split the Yam Suf. So Nachshon ben Aminadav, he was the one to lead the way. It was very risky. It was very difficult for everyone to do what he did, to be the first one. But in a great sense, it's to his credit that he was the one that jumped in. So too, in the negative sense as well, that even though the most important part of the destruction of the Beit HaMikdash was the actual day of the destruction, which is Tisha B'Av, the 9th day of Av, nevertheless, this day of the 10th day of Tevet was the one that the king of Babylon, made a siege on Yerushalayim. Therefore, because that started the mourning and the destruction of the Beit HaMikdash and Yerushalayim, therefore this day is considered the most severe. Now, the Rambam quotes a very interesting passage, and he says like this: Kol hatzomot ha'elu, all of these fast days, atidim libatel limot HaMashiach, are going to be nullified when Mashiach comes. V'lo od, not only that, ela shehem atidim lihiyot yamim tovim, they are going to be chagim, holidays, v'yemei sason v'simcha, and there will be days of joy and rejoicing. Shene'amar, as it says in the verse, Ko amar Hashem tzvakot, Hashem Almighty said, Tzom haravi'i, this is what we alluded to earlier, the fast day of the 4th, which is the 4th month of Tammuz, which is the 17th day of Tammuz. The Tzom HaChamishi, the fast day of the 5th, meaning the Tisha B'Av, the Av is the 5th month of the Jewish calendar. The Tzom HaShvi'i, Tzom Gedalia, which is in the 3rd day of the 7th month, Tishrei. The Tzom HaAsiri, and the fast day of the 10th month, which is today, which is, by the way, the 10th of the 10th day of the 10th month. It will be for the house of Judah, for Am Yisrael, for joy and happiness. And for holidays, and the truth and the peace they love. And so, what do we see from here? That all of the fast days are going to be holidays. Now, how can that be? How is it possible that these fast days are going to be holidays? Aren't they sad days? Okay, so when Mashiach comes, we're not going to fast. Granted. But they're going to be holidays? Why would they be holidays? And the answer is that the galut leads into Geula. Galut, exile, leads into redemption. So when we have is something which is sad, when that will happen, when that exact same thing will happen in redemption, it's going to be the exact opposite. So, for example, we know in Chassidut that when you have a wall which is very tall and the wall falls down, which part of the wall falls furthest from the wall? The top. The top stones on the top of the wall fall furthest. So when you have redemption, the highest level of redemption, when it goes into galut, when it goes into exile, it falls the furthest. So when we rebuild the Beit HaMikdash, when we rebuild the wall of Yerushalayim, these stones are going to be on the top because it's going to be days of celebration. A little deeper explanation. To everything in the world, you have the external part and you have the internal part. Especially in Torah, we have the external and the internal. It's a pattern that Hashem made in the world. When you look at something, you see the external, you see what we see. We're human beings. But when you look deeper and you narrow in and you zoom in, no pun intended, you're able to reveal deeper aspects and mystical interpretations of the Torah. It's the same thing as when you look at a person, when you look at a Jewish person especially, on the surface, it seems like a regular person, like any other of the 7 billion people in the world. But when you dig a little deeper and you reveal the fact that this person has an neshama, wow, you're able to reveal the gem, the precious gem which is within them. And the same thing is by a fast day. There are two parts to the fast day. One part is that it's a fast. We're sad for the destruction of the Beit HaMikdash. At the same time, it's called a Yom Ratzon Lashem, a day of Ratzon. It's an auspicious day for us to ask of Hashem whatever we want. True, in the external part of the day, it's a fast day, which is painful, it's not convenient, but at the same time, it's considered a holiday, not a holiday, I'm sorry, it's considered a Yom Ratzon, an auspicious day. Therefore, before Mashiach comes, we look at a fast day, what do we see? The external part, which is the fact that it's a fast day. But even now, we know the depth, that really deep down, it's a very auspicious day to Hashem. When Mashiach comes, and the external part is not going to be there anymore, what are we going to have? We're going to have the more meaningful part, which is the Yom Ratzon Hashem, that it's an auspicious day for us to connect to Hashem. Therefore, it's going to be Yemei Sason v'Simcha, happy days and holidays. So 1 + 1 = 2. Well, it depends who you ask. If we say that the fast days are going to be holidays, and which fast day is considered the saddest fast day today, the 10th of Tevet, because we've already established that the day which launches the sadness, the destruction of the Beit HaMikdash, is considered the saddest day. Then when Mashiach comes, this day is going to be the happiest day. It's going to be the greatest Chag that there can be. Because when Mashiach comes, the deepest part is going to be revealed. And that's the fact that it's Yom Ratzon Lashem, a day of Ratzon, an auspicious day of us pleading to Hashem that Hashem should give us the best of everything. And just to finish off this Kabbalah Café, by the way, today is just the Kabbalah, I guess. So there's no cafe. We're not allowed to eat. But at least if Mashiach comes right now, this second, before the end of the Kabbalah Café, so we'll be able to reveal the cafe within the fast day, which means that it's not only going to be a spiritual enjoyment, hopefully this class, but also be able to have cafe. We'll also be able to have the innermost part of the fast day and this shiur of Kabbalah Café. And I just want to connect it with the Parsha of the week. It's a beautiful connection. What are the first three words of the Parsha? Vayigash, Elav, Yehuda. And Yehuda came close to him. Who's him? Yosef. Yehuda said, I'm fed up. That's enough. After I guaranteed that Binyamin is going to come back, I'm not going to let Yosef, he didn't know that it's Yosef, I'm not going to let him get away with it. And he ends up putting his foot down, literally, and Yosef reveals himself, and of course Yehuda and everyone, including Binyamin, go back to Yaakov and bring him to Mitzrayim. And so what happens? Yosef is the king, the prime minister, the viceroy, and Yehuda comes close to him. According to Kabbalah, Yosef represents the 6 midot, which correspond to the learning of Torah. Yehuda corresponds to Malchut, which corresponds to the observance of mitzvot. Of course, both did both, but each one has a focus. Yosef's focus was the learning of the Torah, and Yehuda's focus was the doing of the mitzvot. Now, the classical question in Judaism is which one is more important? Is it more important to learn Torah, or is it more important to do mitzvot? Well, on one hand, it's more important to learn Torah so you can know which mitzvah to do and how to observe them. On the other hand, the mitzvahs are important because that's why we're here. We're here to do the mitzvot. Seemingly, the point of learning is only to know what to do. It's not only. We learn Torah, it's the mitzvah itself to learn Torah, even beyond the knowledge to know how to observe the mitzvah. But on a simple level, we learn Torah for them to know how to observe the mitzvot. So what's the classical answer in the Talmud? They're both most important. Learning Torah is most important in order to know how to do the mitzvot. So, in short, because we only have a few moments left until the end of this shir, that before Mashiach comes, Yosef is more important. When Mashiach comes, Yehuda is more important. Before Mashiach comes, we don't yet see the beauty of the accomplishments of our mitzvahs. So we do a mitzvah, for example, we put on tefillin. With all due respect to the tefillin, it's a piece of parchment that we wrap around, we write the parshas and we put inside the box. We wrap the straps around our arms. And that's wonderful, but we don't necessarily see the accomplishment of what we've done. We don't necessarily feel how special and holy it is. When Mashiach comes, we're going to see the accomplishments of all of our mitzvot. So including, there are so many, we say a bracha on food. Can we tell how the food is different after the bracha than before the bracha? You know, the picture is that half the picture is before and half the picture is after. We can't necessarily tell the difference between the two. When Mashiach comes, we're going to be able to see and recognize the accomplishments of what we've done throughout the time of Galut. So before Mashiach comes, if we're to choose one of them, is the learning Torah. Learning Torah could feel more special. But when Mashiach comes, we're going to see the depth. We're going to be able to reveal the beautiful accomplishments that we've done over the past 2,000 years of Galut and over the past 5,781 years since the world was created, in preparation for this moment when Mashiach will come. Therefore, in the beginning of the Parsha, we say, Vayigash Elav Yehuda. Yehuda comes close to Yosef. Yosef is the king. Yosef is the main one. And Yehuda has to come close, has to bow down to Yosef. But in the Haftorah that tomorrow we're going to read, which is after the reading of the Parsha Vayigash, then we're going to read one of the prophecies of when Mashiach will be here. And over there it says, V'haya melech echad l'kulam, that Yehuda, David, comes from the house of Mashiach comes from the house of David, and David HaMelech comes from the house of Yehuda. That's why, according to Kabbalah, he's Malchut. Then Yosef will come close to Yehuda, and moreover, Echad be'echad yigashu, each one will come towards the other one. But the point that I'm trying to bring out is that then Yehuda will be the most important one. So over here we see a similar point of what we said earlier. What did we say earlier? That by a fast day you have the external part and you have the internal pnimiyut, the meaningful part of it, which is the Yom Ratzon Hashem, that it's an auspicious day for Hashem. So too we have this concept of Yehuda. We have the external part of Yehuda, which right now, before Mashiach comes, and all of the history up until now has been that Yehuda is special, but we don't necessarily recognize the pnimiyut, how the Malchut is more special than anything else in the world, how doing a practical mitzvah is priceless. Right now, we cannot recognize, we cannot understand it, because we don't see the pnimiyut, because we don't see the innermost part of what we're accomplishing. We do it because we know it's important. When Hashem gave us the Torah, we said, Na'aseh v'nishma, we will do, and then we said we'll hear, we'll listen, we'll learn. Because the most important part is the deed. The most important part of Yiddishkeit is the actual mitzvah. Nevertheless, still now we still observe them, the mitzvot, and we know that when Mashiach comes, we're going to see the pnimiyut. We're going to see the light of every mitzvah. It's not just a quote-unquote materialistic physical mitzvah, which is done with the physical world. But we're going to see the great accomplishments of what we've done in this world, and that is priceless. We're going to recognize how it's priceless. Not only knowing that it's priceless, but we're going to appreciate how it is priceless. And so therefore, we should also learn from this special talk about how we should look at another person, especially another Jew, that even though we do not see the neshama inside, we just see what we see at face value. We should not take it for face value. We shouldn't judge anyone. We should recognize that every person has within themselves a special neshama, a special soul, a precious, priceless soul. And therefore, we should try as much as possible, even before Mashiach comes, even though we cannot, even though we cannot appreciate it yet. Nevertheless, we should try our best to try to put ourselves cut and paste into a Mashiach era, and try to see as much as possible the depth of the Torah, the depth of every mitzvah, the depth of everything that we see, the depth of every fast day, and to try to take it for what it really is in the pnimiyut, in the innermost part, in the mystical part, in the deeper part. And Bezrat Hashem, just like this year, we are connecting from the fast day, going right into Shabbos. When Mashiach comes, it's going to be one long Shabbos. Let's hope that Hashem makes it a little earlier. And right now is 2 minutes to 10. Hashem can bring Mashiach this moment, and we'll go right into the big Shabbos, which we're right here in Yerushalayim. For us, it will be the greatest Yom Tov of all, because right now for us, it's the saddest day. We are in Yerushalayim over here, and we're experiencing the saddest day right over here in Yerushalayim, because we feel the pain, we feel the destruction, we see the destruction with our own eyes. We ask Hashem that it should be Bonei Yerushalayim. Hashem should rebuild Yerushalayim. V'techazena einenu b'shuvcha l'tzion b'rachamim. May Hashem return our eyes to see the rebuilding of Tzion, of Zion, of Yerushalayim. May it be this moment, right now. There's no better time for that than today, which is the 10th of Tevet, which is going to be the greatest Chag of all. Amen v'amen. Bezrat Hashem, everyone's welcome to come this Shabbat to join Chabad of Rechavia for the services. Mincha will be earlier, as I mentioned earlier. It will be at 4 o'clock because we still need to read the Torah. Then it will be Kabbalah Shabbat. And then the fast is over at 5:10, which means that we'll start Ma'ariv right away at 5:10. The Kabbalah Shabbat will start earlier at about a quarter to 5, but at 5:10 we'll start the Baruch Hu, the Kaddish, Baruch Hu, Shema, and the Amidah. And about 5:20 we'll go home, we'll say Kiddush, and everyone will be able to eat, Bezrat Hashem, a wonderful meal. Thank you so much for joining us. Looking forward to seeing you live, Bezrat Hashem, next week, every morning, Sunday morning with Rabbi Diamond, and then afterwards with yours truly, learning a very special subject, which I will inform you about after Shabbat. Thank you so much. Have a Shabbat Shalom. Shalom, Shalom.